We once had a patient on our unit, Mrs. Adele Morris, late 70s. She'd been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, the kind that creeps in silently and spreads before anyone realizes it. By the time she was placed in hospice care, just a few weeks before coming to our inpatient facility, it was already too late for treatment. There wasn't much to be done. She wasn't in pain, not exactly. It was more like an overwhelming exhaustion, the kind of tired that no amount of sleep can ease. Adele was a quiet woman, polite, gentle, but always watching the door. Her family said she'd been that way since her husband passed 2 years prior. Not paranoid, just expectant, like she was waiting for someone or something. On her first day, they brought in her cat, Moxie, a big, slow-moving calico with tangled fur and eyes that looked like they'd seen the end of the world. She was clearly old, maybe even older than Adele in spirit. Hospice has rules about pets, of course, vaccinations, temperament checks, containment policies. But rules can bend, especially in this kind of work. You learn when to look past them. Moxie wasn't there for comfort. Not exactly. She was there because Adele needed her in a way no protocol could explain. The cat didn't meow, didn't explore. She didn't eat the little dish of food Emily, Adele's daughter, left by the nightstand. Moxie just settled herself at the foot of the bed and stayed there 3 days straight. No sleep, barely blinked. She stared at Adele like she was holding vigil. I've seen animals grieve before. Dogs that won't leave the side of a past owner. Cats who vanish under beds and refuse to come out. But this felt different. Intentional. Like Moxie knew exactly what was happening and why her stillness mattered. We checked on her constantly, me, other nurses, the CNA working the night shift. He even joked nervously that the cat might go before Adele. We tried everything. Warm saucers of tuna, little scratches behind the ears. Nothing worked. On the second day, we debated calling animal control, but Emily begged us to let her stay. Just one more night. By the third evening, Adele had slipped into a deeper unconsciousness. She no longer responded to touch. Her breathing was shallow but rhythmic, the kind of rhythm we call the pause before the still. You learn to see it coming. The shift in skin tone, that soft gurgle at the back of the throat families always panic over. But is it what they think it is? Her hands were cool, not mottled yet. No last words. The moment itself came around 4:17 a.m. I was alone in the room. Her breathing stopped. No gasp, no drama, just a gentle stillness. I reached for my stethoscope, confirmed what I already knew, then began the post-mortem care. I remember pulling the curtain partway across the doorway, not for her, but for myself. There's something sacred about that silence right after someone passes. And then Moxie stood up. No sound at first, just the scratch of her claws against the tile. She stretched slowly, like someone waking from a long, stiff sleep. Then she turned to the window, a tall, crank-style hospital window that no one ever uses. She sat there for about 10 seconds, then let out a sound I'll never forget. It wasn't a meow. It wasn't even a cry. It was thin and hollow and long, like something that had been held in too long. That one sound was enough to bring one of the aides running, but I waved her off. I was still documenting the time of death. After that, Moxie lay down by the window and closed her eyes. No more cries, just a stillness of her own, like something in her had finally exhaled. Emily returned later that morning, after the funeral home had taken her mother. She found Moxie still curled by the window. She picked her up gently, and for the first time, the cat purred. Not loudly, just a soft vibration you could feel if you were close enough. Moxie lived another 2 years after that. Emily sent us holiday cards with updates. She said Moxie never sat on furniture anymore. Only windowsills, always facing out. We never really talked about that night. Not formally. The staff brought it up here and there, mostly in quiet conversations. No one called it paranormal, but we all felt something. Now, when someone brings in a pet, an old dog, or a cat with quiet eyes, we pay a little more attention. When one of them refuses to eat or move, or even blink, we don't explain it away, because some companions know. They just know. They know when the journey is about to end. And some of them wait to say goodbye in their own time, in their own way. Hello, friends. Thank you for watching. A special shout out to our incredible subscribers. You help keep these powerful and eerie stories alive. But here's something you might not know. Only 30% of our viewers are actually subscribed. If you enjoy content like this, please hit that subscribe button. It only takes a second, but it makes a huge difference. While you're at it, don't forget to like and share to help others discover these chilling journeys. You made this possible. And I'll see you in the next one if you dare. Someone once said the soft hum of fans and whisper voices on a hospice floor can be comforting. That white noise that, oddly enough, helps people sleep. This story took place about 3 years ago. I was covering rooms 203 through 208, and I remember it clearly because 205 was where Miss Eliza stayed. She was in her mid-80s, admitted with end-stage congestive heart failure, along with sharp decline in dementia over the last few months. She'd been living with her daughter, Lisa, until it became too much. Her oxygen levels would swing unpredictably, medications would get missed, and the evenings brought restlessness that didn't let up. By the time she arrived at our facility, she barely spoke, just nodded every so often, blinked slowly, and stared off into spaces that weren't really there. Her body stayed still, almost unnaturally so. That kind of stillness you only see when the last chapter is coming to a close. Lisa came by every day. She brought clean socks, little potted plants, lavender-scented lotion. Her room was always peaceful, neutral. We'd place a standard padded recliner next to the bed, the kind we've used for years, same vinyl covering, same fading from wear. And then, one Tuesday morning during early rounds, something shifted. I came in just before 6 to check vitals. The sun was beginning to rise, soft orange light bleeding through the blinds. Miss Eliza was already awake, head tilted toward the recliner. She smiled not at me, but directly at the chair. "He's back," she whispered. I froze for a second, honestly stunned. That was the first full sentence she'd put together since we admitted her. I crouched beside her gently and asked, "Who's back, sweetheart?" "Whiskers," she said. "He found me again." Now, in hospice care, we're used to visions, loved ones long gone, old memories, even dreamlike visits. But this was different. There was clarity in her tone. She went on to describe a gray tabby with a white patch on his chest and a small notch in his left ear. She said he used to sleep on that exact chair back home. And now, he was back, sleeping right there again. She told me how he twitched while dreaming, curled up on the left side of the chair like a crescent moon, tail tucked close to his body. When Lisa came in later that day, I gently brought it up, told her what her mom had said. Her face went pale. "That's exactly how she always described him," she said softly. "Whiskers died nearly 10 years ago." She was devastated, cried for days. And after her memory started slipping, she never mentioned him again. Not once. We both turned to look at the recliner. Of course, it was empty, just worn vinyl and fading seams. But from that day forward, every time I checked on Miss Eliza, her gaze would flick to that spot. She started talking more, always in a soft, peaceful way, always about Whiskers. She'd say he kept her warm. She said he didn't meow anymore, just purred gently and blinked like he understood everything. Sometimes, in the quietest part of the night, I'd see her hand resting gently in the air, just above the recliner. Not reaching, not holding, just floating like she was petting something invisible. I'd smooth her blanket and say nothing. What could I say? 2 days later, I came in early again. I always tried to be the one to check on her first. She had passed peacefully, no signs of struggle, no call light pressed. Her hands were resting slightly above the mattress, like she drifted off in mid-motion. And the recliner, that morning, the seat cushion had an impression on it. I'm not trying to make it sound eerie or dramatic. I double-checked, asked one of the night shift aides if anyone had sat there. They said no. The room hadn't been entered for hours. But the crease was fresh. Not deep, but enough to notice. Like someone or something had been there for a while and then just slipped away. We cleaned the room later that day. I helped strip the bed and wipe down the recliner. As I pushed the chair back into its corner, I noticed something. A few short gray hairs caught in the seam of the cushion. I picked one up, soft, fine, not human. I didn't keep it, didn't bag it for evidence. I just let it fall. Because the truth is, in hospice care, we don't always need explanations. What we need are moments of comfort, moments of presence. Miss Eliza didn't pass alone. She left this world with a memory curled beside her, a little piece of love that found its way back to her exactly when she needed it. And sometimes that's enough. Same cat, he said before I'd even stepped fully into the room. It's back, same spot right on my feet. I paused, taken aback, but not surprised. I asked what it looked like. Black, he said quietly. Short-haired. Yellow eyes. Doesn't purr, just stares. Now, I've been in hospice long enough to know not to dismiss what patients say in their final days, whether it's the effects of medication, the slowing down of body systems, or something else entirely. Those final lucid moments can stretch reality in ways that don't always make sense to the rest of us. But Mr. Dalton wasn't confused. He knew who I was. He knew exactly where he was. And each night, he gave the same quiet report, the same cat in the same spot, always there. I started checking the room before every shift. Not because I truly believed I'd find a cat curled at the foot of bed, but because there's comfort in the ritual, something grounding for both of us. And still, every time I sat beside him, smoothed his blanket or gave him his meds, he'd give a small nod toward the end of the bed, like it was just part of our routine now. One night, maybe 5 days before he passed, I stayed late. It had been a brutal shift. 2 patients gone back to back, and I was tired, emotionally wrung out, finishing charts well past my scheduled time. I stepped into Mr. Dalton's room just before midnight. He was awake, breathing heavily, and he looked straight at me. "It's still there," he whispered. "You don't see it?" I told him gently that I didn't. Then I asked if it scared him. He shook his head slowly. "No, just makes it hard to move, like it's keeping me here." That stopped me cold. I'd heard patients talk about visions, about seeing people long gone, or hearing music in the quiet. But this, something holding him back? I sat down beside him and placed my hand over his. "Do you think it wants something from you?" He was silent for a long moment. Then, with a breath barely louder than the oxygen hum in the corner, he said, "I think it knows when I'm going. Just doesn't want me rushing it." We didn't say much after that. He drifted into a light sleep, and I stayed with him for a while, listening to his breathing settle. The room had a weight to it, not scary, not oppressive, just present, like something else was there with us, quietly waiting. Mr. Dalton died a few nights later. I wasn't on shift that night, but the nurse who was with him said his passing was peaceful. Eyes closed, a soft exhale, stillness. When I came in the next morning, I found a note taped to his chart. Dalton expired at 2:11 a.m. No distress. Blankets unmoved. Feet uncovered. I froze. Feet uncovered. That might not seem like much, but he had never, not once, slept with his feet exposed. We tucked him in every night, even the nights he talked about the cat. I asked the CNA who had helped lay him out how the linens looked. She told me. It was strange. The sheet was folded back at the foot of the bed, just the bottom. Looked like someone pulled it down, but not him. His legs weren't strong enough for that. We've never had a cat on the unit. Not once. But still, whenever a new patient starts talking about a weight on their legs, or looks past me like they're seeing something just behind, I think of Mr. Dalton. I think of that silent black cat he swore sat by his feet every night. And sometimes when I walk past his old room in the middle of a shift, I catch myself glancing down just to make sure there's nothing there. Most nights, the halls are calm. There's a stillness in a hospice that you don't find in other places. It's not just quiet, it's reverent. The loudest sounds are the ticking wall clocks, the soft scuff of nurses' shoes on linoleum, the steady hush of portable fans and oxygen concentrators. On this particular night, it was just after 3 a.m. We had 6 patients in-house, all stable or declining as expected. Meds had been passed. Vitals were charted. Beds adjusted. I was doing my usual rounds. One last walk to make sure everything felt right. Unit B is our older wing. It's small, just 6 rooms in a tight little square. Room 203 had gone still about an hour earlier. That's what we call it, gone still. Miss Genevieve Holloway, late 70s, congestive heart failure and cancer. She'd been unresponsive for 2 days. Her breathing had slowed by the hour, and her son, Alan, had been sitting beside her whispering things none of us could hear. When she passed, it was quiet. No sudden breath, no alarms. Just an exhale, and then nothing. Alan had left around 2:30 a.m. His eyes were red, but there was peace in his face. She loved cats, he told me. Had one named Lucy. Said that cat understood her better than most people ever did. I nodded. We hear things like that a lot in here, I said. Sometimes they matter more than we realize. About 20 minutes later, as I was finishing notes outside room 205, it happened. A loud, drawn-out meow. Not a house cat's meow. This one was raw, distressed, almost urgent. It sounded like it came from right behind me. I turned instantly. Nothing. I walked a few feet toward room 203. Another meow. Same tone, same volume, closer. It wasn't coming from a speaker or phone. This was real. It carried. We didn't have therapy animals on duty that night. And there are no cats on staff, obviously. I opened the door to room 203. Miss Genevieve's body was still there, gently covered in the handmade quilt her family had brought. The room was quiet, dim, warm. No movement. But there on the nightstand was something I hadn't seen earlier, a folded note placed above her framed photo. It read in faded pen, "Please remember Lucy." Beneath the folded note was a short list of sentimental things to be donated to Hospice. A couple of worn blankets, her favorite ceramic mugs, a small donation, and a paragraph about Lucy, her cat from childhood. She wrote that Lucy was black and white, born during a thunderstorm in early summer, and lived for 19 full years. The final sentence, though, stuck with me. If there's anything left of me, I hope she's who I see first. I stood there longer than I probably should have. Something about it all felt weighty, not scary, just unresolved, like an open door not yet shut. I did what we're trained to do. Opened the closet, looked under the bed, half expecting to spot a hidden pet or forgotten stuffed animal. Nothing. I checked the window. Locked. The strange sound hadn't come again. And by the time the transport crew arrived to take her body at 4 a.m., I convinced myself the meow I heard earlier had just been a fluke. Maybe it was the wind outside. Maybe someone's phone playing an old video. In this line of work, you learn how to brush things off. We have to. If we didn't, we wouldn't last. But here's the part one haven't been able to let go of. That same meow was heard 2 more times in that same room over the next 3 weeks. Different shifts, different staff. Same sound. Always between 3 o'clock and 4 a.m. Never more than twice in a night. One nurse, half joking, half nervous, actually left a small saucer of milk outside the door. It sat untouched. Eventually, the sound stopped. The room quieted. It was back to the normal hospice noises. The steady hum of the HVAC, the occasional cry from a room down the hall, the mundane rhythm of time winding down. But something changed in me after that. I started keeping a list. Patients who mentioned animals in their final days. And the more I recorded, the more I noticed. The people they talked about most weren't spouses, not even siblings. It was always the animals. Dogs, cats, even a parrot once. I don't know what it means. Maybe it's just a memory of comfort rising to the surface, holding on to whatever gave us peace. But on Genevieve's night, it felt different, like something came for her. Or maybe something followed her out, something that remembered, something that meowed. The smell began midweek. Sharp, familiar, unmistakable. It wasn't just musty air or bleach or old wax. No, this was cat litter. And not fresh litter either. That sour, dusty scent of a box left unchanged a little too long. It wafted down from the east hallway, just past the med room, 2 doors from the linen closet. I first caught it during routine rounds, beginning of night shift. That wing had been empty all week. No new admissions. No supply carts. No mop buckets parked around the corner. But that smell, it lingered low and constant, like something that shouldn't be there. We have a protocol for strange odors. You check the vents. Make sure trash is out. Document anything odd. I followed it step by step. The housekeeping crew had deep cleaned just 2 days earlier. Air filters were new. No spills. No forgotten laundry bins. I even cracked open a few storage drawers near the end of the hallway, just in case. Nothing. Just that scent. Faint and persistent. Like a litter box overdue for changing. Room 219 sits at the very end of that hallway. The door's been locked for weeks now, per the family's request. We don't enter unless it's to assign the room again. The woman who stayed there, Mrs. Ellen Mofftraft, 89, passed away peacefully. Or as close to peacefully as anyone can. That was 6 weeks ago. I'd been one of her regular nurses. Ellen had advanced congestive heart failure, but she was sharp, kind, always thanked you, even when she could barely breathe. What made her stand out, though, was how often she mentioned her cat, Percy. She talked about him like he was still alive. Percy's probably pacing by the door, she'd say with a soft smile. He doesn't like it when I'm late. Other times, she'd ask us to crack the window. Percy likes to feel the breeze. At first, we assumed he was being looked after by family. But one night, while I was charting, her daughter came by with a small box. Inside was a velvet pouch. She handed it to Ellen without a word. The room fell quiet. Later that night, when I checked on her, Ellen was still holding the pouch. Inside was Percy's collar. She didn't cry, just whispered, "Now he won't be alone." She held that collar every night until the end. When we found her, she still had it in her hand. Her face was peaceful. No struggle, just stillness. The room was cleared the next day. Furniture wiped down. No sign of a litter box. No toys. No food bowls. Just empty space. And yet, weeks later, that scent came back. That unmistakable odor of litter and old fur. No explanation. No source. We didn't raise alarms. Hospice teaches you to avoid overreacting. But soon, even visitors started noticing. "I didn't know pets were allowed here," one woman whispered to her husband as they passed by. Maintenance checked the vents. Look for rodents or leaks. Nothing. And they're thorough. If there had been something physical, they would have found it. Eventually, I brought it up to Diane, one of the aides who'd been close with Ellen too. She just nodded, like she'd been waiting for me to say it. "I started storing linens down the other hallway," she said. "That smell makes me feel like I'm being watched." That was her word. Not haunted, not scared. Watched. And now, on some nights, when the building settles into its quiet lull, I pause outside room 219 during my final rounds. The door's still locked, but every so often, it feels like something's still in there, waiting, watching. That faint scent rising just in front of the door, like Percy never left, like he's still waiting for her. I don't tell the new staff. No reason to fuel gossip. And truthfully, I don't think it's anything to be afraid of. Not everything that lingers is darkness. Sometimes, it's just love that refuses to leave. That's what hospice teaches you more than anything else. Endings aren't always clean. Some bonds don't break, even after the heartbeat fades. Some pets never stop waiting at the door. And sometimes, even a faint litter box smell can speak louder about grief than words ever could. Thank you all for joining me on these journeys. Your support means everything, and I truly love reading your reactions and personal experiences in the comments. If these stories gave you chills or just made you feel something, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more haunting tales. Have you ever had a moment like this? Something unexplainable? Something unforgettable? If so, share in the comments below. Every story adds to the heartbeat of this community. And if you know someone who would enjoy a little scare, share this video with them. Stay tuned for more spine-chilling stories. And remember, sometimes the scariest tales are the ones that feel real. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one if you dare.